I'm very nervous right now. Yeah, although I've sang on stage many times, this is totally different because I'm speaking, I am not singing. So, okay. Anyways, I'll just flash a few pictures, sorry, here, where you might know me from. There might be three perspectives that you may know me from. Okay, first is my family. So here you can see a small picture of my whole family. My father, Pastor Romel, who's my copy-paste. I look exactly like him. Kuya Mark, my brother, my older brother, and my beautiful mother. Happy Mother's Day, Mommy. Love you. Korean hearts. Yes, my beautiful mother. Another place that you may know me from, as Tita Bari has mentioned, is the youth ministry. So I've been in the youth ministry for a long time. First, I was a youth participant ever since I graduated from the Wink Ministry. And here you can see me as a participant in our youth camp. And after being in the youth just a youth, I moved up to become a youth leader. And here are my girls, all of those who I've led or am currently leading. You see up there are my ates in the youth. And then we have the younger people, my girls right now, A-Rich, Chloe, Sam, Iana, and Solen. And still, if not from there, the last perspective that you may know me from is from music ministry. In fact, last week, I was standing here, and I was singing. Those are the three perspectives that you may know me from, okay? Just keep in mind those three perspectives because it's a little teaser about our sermon today. Yes, okay? You know, our sermon series for this month of May is Turning Tables when Jesus turned the world upside down. So what exactly does turning tables or the phrase turn the tables mean? I mean, we all know this phrase, but we don't really use it from day to day, but maybe you've read it in a book. It's like turning a new leaf or turning 180, right? So usually, turn the tables is a phrase used when we want to change our position from a point of disadvantage to an advantage, right? So last week, if you guys were here, Ate Nina shared and opened our sermon series with the story about Levi Matthew in Luke 5, where Jesus shared a meal with a bunch of sinners and other tax collectors just like Levi. And then there are some Pharisees there that are judging Jesus, and it's like, this is not the way. But he was like, no, he's not of this world, right? And if I could recap her message, the message that she wanted you guys to take home, it was that Jesus' table is a safe space for all. So what about me, right? What am I going to be sharing today? You'll see, I'll give you a little teaser again with this picture. So, from this picture, I'll give you a few seconds, observe, look, who are the characters in the story, okay? Do we kind of know already? Do we kind of get what the story is that I'm going to be sharing today? It's about the sinful woman, right? And there are three main characters that I'll be focusing on today. Or if you could say the three perspectives from my introduction about me. Yes, the three perspectives or the three people that I'll be talking about today is the sinful woman, Simon the Pharisee, and Jesus. So these three characters they each have a big impact or a significant role in the story or in this passage about the sinful woman. And of course, when Jesus is present, there's always a lesson. So if I could entitle our conversation today, it would be this: The Forgiven Woman. Our conversation would be on Luke 7, verse 36 to 50. So before we get into the story or the passage and the verses, there is one message that I'd like all of us to remember or to at least take home today or think about. It is this: love grows deeper when we remember our place as sinners. Maybe right now you don't really understand what I'm trying to say. We're like, okay, great, nice message. But as we go along the passage and the verses and look really what is the meaning that in the story, we'll hopefully understand better why I feel like this is a very important message today. So let's get straight into our verse. First verse, says this. Now one of the Pharisees invited Jesus to have dinner with him. Okay, immediately pause. Remember, I mentioned three main characters: the sinful woman, Simon the Pharisee, and Jesus. So who do you guys think this Pharisee is who invited Jesus over? Of course, it's Simon, because he's the main character too. So Simon was the Pharisee who invited Jesus over for dinner. If I could give you guys a background context, why exactly did Simon or the other Pharisees who's with him felt the need to meet with Jesus or to have dinner with Jesus? Of course, we know that the Pharisees didn't really like Jesus, right? Because he did things differently from them. So they had some hidden agendas. Firstly, these Pharisees wanted to challenge Jesus' knowledge of the law. Because at this time, they started to know, like, oh, there's this man called Jesus, like, he's getting famous. He's being known as this eccentric preacher, miracle worker. He heals on the Sabbath. Like, what? That is not how we are supposed to act. You're doing it wrong, Jesus. But people are like, no, this is the Messiah. He's the Son of God. He's different. And maybe it like hit part of the egos of the Pharisees, right? Because they're like, we're the one following the law so strictly, and you're calling that man the Son of God? Like, he's not even on par with us. Hello, that's not the link. It's not linking, right? So they're like, no, we're gonna challenge Jesus. We're gonna put him on the spot when we eat dinner with him. Let's make him think that, we're just gonna chica with Jesus. But no, they wanted to challenge him and his knowledge about the law. And second, maybe as I mentioned, Jesus was becoming a famous man. Word is starting to spread out about who Jesus was. So maybe Simon, deep down, knew that if I honor Jesus by inviting him into my house and becoming the host, maybe people in the town will know also who I am and maybe honor my name, you know? Maybe I'll become Simon the famous Pharisee, Simon the one who invited Jesus over, right? Because he knew Jesus had some entertainment value. He was famous. Maybe if he invited Jesus, Jesus would do like a miracle in his house and I'll be associated with Jesus. But that's my own speculation. We never know, right? So let's get back to the verse. So when Simon invited Jesus to dinner, Jesus obviously accepts this invitation, and he went to the Pharisee's house and reclined at the table. Wow, feeling VIP. I could never, because if you think about it, Simon the Pharisee and Jesus, they don't seem like tight or close, like besties, like that. Maybe they're just acquaintances, or maybe they just heard of each other, not really close. But when Simon invited Jesus, Jesus was like, okay, if you invite me, I'm gonna make myself at home in your home. Sana all right, sana all confident. Because if you think about it, do we invite Jesus like that into our homes, which is our hearts? Yeah, just a question for you to think. So imagine that scene, Jesus, the VIP guest, with maybe all the other Pharisees and maybe the 12 disciples around that table in Simon's house, eating, drinking, talking with one another. And of course, as I said, Jesus was starting to become more famous. So in that town, word must have spread of Jesus going to Simon's house. So obviously, if you know that your idol is somewhere near you, is in Singapore or in your area, you'd be like, let's go. Like, even if we're not supposed to be there, even though we're not invited, let's just go just to see him, observe from far. Let's hear if he says anything like super cool or whatever, right? So there must have been some uninvited guests who came to Simon's house and crowded around the house in the sidelights, looking through the window, through the door, just looking at Jesus like, what is he going to do? Is he going to do something? Is he going to say something? Right? So imagine that scene in your head, right? And a new character is going to be mentioned now, the last character. So then a woman who had lived a sinful life in that town, learned that Jesus was eating at the Pharisee's house, and she brought an alabaster jar of perfume. So, whoa. The sinful woman has finally been mentioned in the story. So here they say a woman who had lived a sinful life. They had to mention that she lived a sinful life. Like, why? Why so special? You had to really point out the biggest flaw about this woman, her living her life sinfully. And if you don't understand exactly, because it's not said in detail, what kind of sins she's been living, she was a prostitute. So basically, she sells herself to men for money. And maybe that was the only way she knew how to live, right? So here they mentioned a woman and she lived a sinful life, and she learned that Jesus was eating at the Pharisee's house. Maybe nobody directly told her, because as a sinful woman, people would be ashamed to be seen with her, or people would not want to associate with her at all. So maybe just by hearing conversations from other people who are talking with one another, she was like, oh, Jesus is at Simon's house. And then she's like, oh, I want to see him. But how does she know him, right? Maybe she's heard about Jesus. Maybe she's seen Jesus from far and he's doing some miracles. Or maybe she's heard a testimony from someone that Jesus has healed, right? You never know exactly because they don't say it. But just imagine that could have been why she was wanting to meet Jesus so badly. So what does she do after she prepares herself with an alabaster jar of perfume? So she then goes to that house, and she stood behind him, Jesus, at his feet, weeping. And she began to wet his feet with her tears. Then she wiped them with her hair, kissed them, and poured perfume on them. Wow. So humble. She comes in as an uninvited guest. She barges, it's not explicitly said, but can you imagine, she just barges in, pushes through the crowd of other uninvited guests outside and barges into the door and was like, where's Jesus? Saw Jesus and I was like, I'm going to go to him. I'm running to him. I'm going to go at his feet, right? I could never, that takes a lot of confidence, a lot of bravery, and a lot of guts. And knowing who she was, because of course she knows who she is and how much she's worth, all the more people would be shocked to see her just come into the house uninvited in a room full of men, may I say, and just go down at Jesus' feet. Okay? If it still doesn't hit you exactly, let's imagine that scene through this picture. So, remember I said Jesus was reclining at the table. So imagine conversations are going down with Simon, other Pharisees, Jesus, and the disciples, all men in this room. And if ever there is a woman, the women are probably serving, doing chores at the kitchen, making food, and yet suddenly a sinful woman enters this room full of men and goes to Jesus. She becomes the object of attention. She becomes what everyone focuses on. But to her focus is just Jesus, right? She didn't care what other people were thinking or who was around her. She saw Jesus. She's like, Jesus, I'm coming at you right now. Running, right? So back then, if I could put it into perspective, back then, women were not equal with men. So if there's a hierarchy, this would be men and women, regular women, would be lower because women were just seen as property. They were not seen as, if you are my wife, I will listen to you. They have no say in anything, no equal footing. All they do is produce children, do chores, housework, like that. Nothing that they say or do is accounted for. And we can see that sometimes in the Bible. For example, the 5,000 people that were fed only accounted for men. No children, women, sick, or elderly. So can you imagine? That's already just a regular woman, okay? But she is a sinful woman. Can you imagine how much lower? She's probably rock bottom, right? There's nowhere else lower that she can go. She hits bedrock. Because maybe other regular women who see her, they're like, at least I don't do this kind of work, right? I don't sell myself for money. At least I'm a respectable woman. But this sinful woman is just there selling herself for money. But that's probably the only way she knew how to live. So, how do you think all these men, thinking about that hierarchy back then, women were nothing, not nothing, but just property. How do you think all these men felt when they saw this sinful woman enter the house and go to Jesus? How do you think Simon, the host, felt? Let's see. So when the Pharisee who had invited him saw this, or Simon saw this, he said to himself, if this man were a prophet, he would know who is touching him and what kind of woman she is, that she is a sinner. So here, Simon, he didn't say it out loud, by the way. He was only thinking it to himself. It's like here, the Bible is revealing a little bit about Simon's character. How does he look at other people? And of course, if you think about it, as a Pharisee who follows the Jewish law religiously and like strictly, that's my life, that's my identity, you can see that he's setting himself apart or he's separating himself from sinners, just like this sinful woman. Because you see here, he says, he would know who is touching him and what kind of woman she is. It's like he's saying, I would never let myself be touched by a sinner like her. But Jesus, I guess he's different, right? He just lets himself be. He can eat with sinners. He can talk with sinners. Let them touch him. But I wouldn't be like that. I'm different. That's how Simon must have felt. Here, you can see the stark contrast between Jesus and Simon and the way that they reacted to this sinful woman. When Simon would judge this woman as a sinner and think like, oh, I would never let her touch me, Jesus, although it's not yet shared what Jesus was feeling, Jesus allowed her to touch him. He didn't push her away or react with disgust. He was just like, if she want to do just let her do what she has to do, right? Are we sometimes like Simon? Do we sometimes, when we feel like we're in a good place with God, or when I'm the closest to Jesus right now, our relationship is tight. Best friends coming, guys. Don't be jealous, of my relationship with Jesus. Sometimes when you're in a good place in life, or you feel like I haven't been committing, or I haven't been falling into my temptations, haven't committing any sins. So feel like, I feel good about myself, about everything. And then when you look around you, you have a close friend, maybe a coworker, or someone you are not really close with, like friends who are of this world, friends who don't know Christ. You see them living life differently from you. You see them that they're so far away from Christ. Do you tend to judge them deep down? Sometimes you may not say it out loud, but Jesus knows your heart. Remember Simon? What Simon was thinking was, he didn't say it out loud. It's only what's in his heart and his mind. But Jesus knew what he was thinking and what he was feeling. So what about us? Are we like Simon? Do you notice yourself sometimes spending less time with people who you see are not good and are doing bad things? What about Jesus? Right? What was his response to what Simon was thinking? And of course, we know Jesus is different. He's not going to think the same way as Simon. And of course, he knew what Simon was thinking. And this is the juicy part, because this is where Jesus turns the table on Simon. And how exactly? We're getting into it. Okay. So let's get back to the verse. So after Simon thought what he was thinking, Jesus answered him, Simon, I have something to tell you. Tell me, teacher, he said. So here Jesus begins to share a parable. So it starts off with two men who owed money to a certain moneylender. One owed him 500 denarii and the other 50. So let's pause here. Okay, we know it's a story about money, but this currency, denarii, doesn't really click in our heads. Okay? It's like, what is that? Okay, I guess it's the money, but what is it, right? So this picture is just for visual purposes, it's just what one denarius looks like. So this denarius is basically the Roman silver coin used back then as their form of currency, but they had three different kinds of coins. They had bronze or copper, silver, and gold. And the values of each of this coin vary based on the material that's used. So when the bronze and copper would be of lowest value, the next is silver, and the highest value would be the gold coins. Okay? So what about today, right? What does 550 denarii mean today? Let's put it into context. So if we do a little bit of math, right, and based on my research, one denarius is about $20 USD. I couldn't find SGD, but the closest is USD. So if we do simple math, 500 denarii would be $10,000, and 50 denarii would be $1,000 today. Whoa, that's a lot of money, okay? Maybe the kids, actually there's no kids here, they're all at Winks, right? Yeah, but it's okay. But maybe the super younger people, you don't really grasp exactly like, oh, okay, money is money, but my money come from mommy and daddy, so they go gets, right? But the parents and the young people who are working, you know how much money this is. And as a fresh graduate, if I start working with my diploma, like as a diploma holder, my pay is about 2K, max like 3K. So a whole month's worth of work and wage is not enough to pay $10,000. I'd have to work so much, okay, just to pay back this moneylender. But back then, low-level workers and slaves, like their pay, right, their wage for a day or even a month's work can vary depending on the employer. Maybe they work 1 day or 1 month and they only get 1 denarius. That is crazy. So can you imagine how much time and effort it would take for them to pay back this moneylender? And maybe those two men, they weren't just working for themselves. Maybe they had families to feed, right? So how are they gonna, they must have been going crazy, like, oh my gosh, I can't pay back this moneylender. So I was correct. Neither of them had the money to pay him back. But the moneylender, he's so gracious because he canceled the debts for both. And that's the end of the parable. So then Jesus asks Simon, now which of them will love him more? So let's imagine us readers are Simon, okay? And Jesus is telling us the story. So who do you think will love the moneylender more? So just a raise of hands, who thinks the one that owed 50 denarii would love the moneylender more? Okay, there are people raising their hands. Great, love that. Love the participation. Thank you po. Now, the other one naman, who thinks that the one that owed 500 denarii would love the moneylender more? If you owed more money, of course, you'd appreciate that your debt is canceled, right? You'd be like, wow, thank you pare, right? Like, wow, love you talaga. So what's Simon's answer naman? So Simon replied, I suppose the one who had the bigger debt canceled. So all of us said it correctly because Jesus says that you have judged correctly. So, end of parable, end of the little story about the two men. I bet Simon and all the other people there are like, okay, sure, there's this, you just shared a very random story to me or to us, but what's the point of this story, right? So Jesus here then puts into context that parable in what was in the scene and what was going on at that moment in time between Simon, the sinful woman, and Jesus. So Jesus then turns toward the woman and said to Simon, do you see this woman? I came into your house and you did not give me any water for my feet. But she wet my feet with her tears and wiped them with her hair. You did not give me a kiss, but this woman, from the time I entered, has not stopped kissing my feet. And 3, you did not put oil on my head, but she has poured perfume on my feet. So here, Jesus listed a few things, and I went by them quite quickly. But if I went by too fast and you're struggling to remember exactly the 3 things that Jesus was comparing between Simon and the sinful woman, I've put it nicely here for you. So we have Simon and the sinful woman. If we put side by side exactly what Jesus was pointing out, it's this. First, Simon didn't give Jesus water for his feet, but the woman used her tears and her hair to wash his feet. Second, Simon didn't give Jesus a kiss, but this woman, from the time she entered, has not stopped kissing Jesus' feet. And third, Simon didn't give Jesus oil for his head, but this woman poured perfume on his feet. Okay, you've pointed it out, but it doesn't really hit us the same way that it must have hit them. Because in our time today, being a host, it's different, right? In today's time, we don't usually give water for people's feet. Usually, today's time, as a host, when we invite people over, we hug them, welcome them. Hey, take off your shoes lah. I'll give you a drink. You want water, Coke, Sprite, anything. I got one. And it's cold. It's cold, right? So that's the way a host is now. But back then, it's different because these are the ways that a host would treat their guests. So, if I could explain it better for you to understand, think about how people back then would travel from point A to point B. They had no transportation system, no MRT, bus, car, Grab, Gojek, Tada, nothing like that, nothing special. The only ways that they could get from point A to B is using, if they're rich, maybe they got donkey, camel. If you're social, maybe you got caravan. Maybe you have a whole parade for you. Or the simplest, easiest way, cheapest way also, is just to walk from point A to B. And mind you, they only wore sandals or slippers back then. And if you're super unlucky, I guess you walk barefoot la, like, props to you, man. The calluses on your feet, very good. But that's how they were back then. Here we have comfortable shoes with the cushion. And the only times we'd ever truly choose to walk if it's for exercise, right? Or unless you're going to your neighbor's house. So it's different back then. So if traveling, and we know Jesus, right? He's no flashy man. He won't pull up or go to Simon's house with a donkey or riding a caravan or a chariot. He would just walk with the disciples to Simon's house. So can you imagine with the terrain and the sandy, rocky ground, how tiring it must be for their feet. So obviously, water for their feet would maybe help them freshen up a little bit, right? And maybe back then also, kissing was just their form of like, I welcome you as my guest. And even, like if you think about it, Simon can't even do these simple things as a host. So it's like Simon's the host who's not really a host, because those 3 things are not hard or are not too difficult or expensive, but he can't even do that for Jesus. Meanwhile, we have this uninvited guest, the sinful woman, barging into the house and like most likely unwelcome, who takes up the role as a host and welcomes Jesus with her tears, with the perfume she poured and wiping his feet. So you can already see the big difference that Jesus is pointing out between Simon and the sinful woman. And you can see how much the sinful woman really cares for Jesus, while Simon does not. So what does Jesus continue to say? Jesus then says, Therefore I tell you, her many sins have been forgiven, for she loved much. But he who has been forgiven little loves little. Okay, Jesus, but there's this simple principle that Jesus is saying here. If someone forgives you, you love them. right? Because they've shown you grace for, like, you've wronged them, but they're like, no, it's okay, I still love you, I still forgive you. So of course you love them. But if someone continually forgives you when you continually wrong them, you'll appreciate and love them more, right? And you can see it so evidently in the sinful woman and in Simon, the difference between them. The sinful woman, her whole life, she lived in sin. She's always been doing wrong because she's a prostitute. She can't, that's just how she lived. But maybe because she knew who she was, a sinner, she had all these burdens, guilt, shame, all this baggage with her. And all this, she's willing to give to Jesus. And Jesus is also willing to forgive her and still meet her where she is and change her life, right? But for Simon, he's a Pharisee who feels like, as a Jewish leader who follows the law strictly to the bone, I've never done anything wrong. Maybe, like, through my actions, I'm always doing good in the eyes of God because that's what His law says. I have to do this, 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 and I'm doing it. So obviously, I'm a good person. So when he sees Jesus, he doesn't see him as someone that, like, he doesn't feel like, I need forgiveness. Like, I don't need Jesus because I don't need to be forgiven, right? But we know that by our own works, we can't be saved. Only Jesus saves. And that's why, just like the sinful woman, our love grows deeper when we remember our place as sinners. Jesus then says to her, your sins are forgiven. And the other guests began to say among themselves, who is this who even forgives sins? And Jesus said to the woman, your faith has saved you. Go in peace. Here, wow. Like, Jesus here is really, he just revealed to everyone that I have the authority to forgive sins, and none of you can take that away from me. Like, only I am able to forgive this sinful woman and turn her into a forgiven woman. And I find that so great because he's showing here that, like, despite where you're from or where you are now, it doesn't matter to him because as long as you just go up to him, he's willing to meet you where you are, anytime, anywhere, any place in your life, right? And Jesus here also says, your faith has saved you. Go in peace. He's also trying to show us that this forgiven woman had so much faith despite not really directly conversing or directly meeting Jesus before. Maybe she's only heard of Jesus from, as I said, from testimonies of other people that had their lives changed when they met Jesus. And slowly she was like, I have faith that this man is different, that he is the only one who will be willing to accept me for who I am and forgive me despite being me, right? And she had that faith that Simon did not. And because of that faith, that led her to meet Jesus at this moment, at this point in time. And she had the chance to be forgiven by Jesus, right? And just like the forgiven woman, and how Jesus still chose to accept her and forgive her, Christ continually reaches out because through our faith, like the forgiven woman, and through Jesus' forgiveness, like how he forgave her, there will be divine transformation. I bet from that moment on, the moment Jesus said to her, your faith has saved you, go in peace. She's totally left behind that life of sin that she had, and she became a new person, living her life the way that Jesus intended her to live her life. Well, what about us, right? Are we just like the forgiven woman? Do we love Jesus enough to welcome him in all aspects of our life? You see, this forgiven woman, she knows her place in that town. She knows that everybody knew her. And probably people whispered and told Jesus, like, hey, that woman's a prostitute. Everybody here knows that she's a prostitute. Like, why are you letting her touch you? But because only she knew and she had faith in Jesus that he will forgive me and still accept me, she wanted to express that love and gratefulness, right, for Jesus. And she came and did all the actions that she did fell to his feet, cried, wiped his feet with her hair, poured perfume on them. That's a response to the forgiveness that Jesus is offering to her. And only she knows what Jesus was offering to her. Nobody else knew. Like, okay, like why suddenly, right? Only she knew and only Jesus knew. Well, what about us? If I could also put it into perspective, when you love someone, like your partner, your best friend, husband, your wife, your girlfriend, boyfriend, that person that you love the most here on earth, aren't they the ones that you run to when you have a happy story, a sad story, good or bad? Doesn't matter. You just want to tell them about your day, your work, what happened today. And you don't care whether what you're saying puts you in a bad light or good light because you know that that person loves me. There's no judgment there. And they'll still love me and accept me for who I am. Jesus is exactly like that. In fact, Jesus is the model, right? So let's make Jesus that safe space. Although we have our close friends that we love a lot, our partners, let's make Jesus that number one person in our lives that we share everything to. The good, the bad, the happy, the sad, all the mess, the dirt, all your shame, your guilt. Don't hide it away just because you feel unworthy. Like, oh, it's unworthy in the eyes of God. He doesn't want to, he wouldn't like to see this. I don't want him to see this because it makes me feel guilty, makes me feel so shameful. But Jesus is not judgmental. He is waiting for you to invite him, to welcome him into your life. He's waiting for you every day. Hey, so Nicole, what did you do today? But sometimes we forget, right? We forget Jesus, or we choose to separate ourselves from Jesus. We're like, no, Lord, I feel really bad right now. Let me just heal by myself. And when I feel like I'm good enough to go to you, then I'll start praying again. I'll start doing devos again. But right now, no, it's not good. I don't want you to see me like this. But no, that's not what Jesus wants. Just like the forgiven woman who comes in confidently, bravely, although she has all this, although she is a sinful woman last time, she still came forward to Jesus. And that's why I challenge us with this. Let's live every day in gratitude and love. And maybe it doesn't make sense right now to you, but when you remember your place as someone who truly, we are all unworthy of what Jesus is offering, his love, his forgiveness, and we're always going to fall short. We're not perfect. We're always going to make mistakes. But Jesus is faithful, God is faithful, and he will choose us every day. And God has given his son. Like, think about it. He literally gave his son away to die on the cross for us. And here we are. No, God, I don't want to see you right now because I'm embarrassed about this small sin when he's so gigantic. Sorry, forgive my English. But yeah, if we always remember that God and that Jesus still continually chooses us, he chose us from the beginning, now and in the future, he'll still choose us and still choose to forgive us and accept us. Surely that love that we receive and that forgiveness that we receive, right, as a response, that love wants to overflow and wants to be expressed outwards, right? Let our lives be filled with his love, and slowly, when our own cup is full of his love, it will overflow, and other people will begin to see that love that you have for Jesus. Those who may or may not know Christ, they will feel that love too. Okay, as I call the music team, I just want to share a personal story. Yeah, I think everybody knew. It's revealed like 2 times na. Yeah, but I recently graduated 2 weeks ago after the bowling tournament. Yeah, thank you. Okay, yes, I graduated on Tuesday, the day after our bowling tournament. And when I think about my life while I was preparing my preaching today, I was counting the little blessings in my life that God has given me, despite me being an unfaithful Christian, someone who always makes mistakes, who always turns away from God. Not always, but there are days when you feel like, no, God, like, stay far away from me. But despite me being like this, being like that, a sinner, He's blessed my life with amazing people. Shout out young people. Amazing friends like these. And amazing family, parents, and my life. Like, I've graduated. That's so amazing. Although it seems like, oh, it's the normal part of life. Of course, everybody goes to school, graduate. But that's a blessing. You graduated. You are able to work now. I can work, that's, count your blessings. Like, God every day reaches out. Even when you feel like you're far away, He's still like, I'm going to bless you. Throw a little bit of blessing your way. Salt puppy vibes. He's like, bless you so that you remember I'm always there. Don't forget me. I'm there. Like, I'm waiting for you. Be like the forgiven woman and just like, sup, Jesus? I'm ready. I'm ready. That's why I hope we all understand when I say that love grows deeper when we remember our place as sinners. Lord, thank you for this time that you have given me and this opportunity that you have given me to become your mouthpiece for today, to share your word, Lord. And I pray that the Holy Spirit has spoken through me and that your message has reached your people here and those who would hear it online. Although sometimes I feel or we feel like we're unworthy, you still choose to use us. Like me, Lord, you've chosen me, although I feel like I am unworthy to stand here in front of your people to share. You still chose me to share in front of all these people today. I pray that the message has touched the hearts of your people. And through this song, Lord, we remind ourselves that you are always there and that we should never turn away from you and that you're always ready to wrap your love around us, Lord. I pray for those who feel like they can't approach you or they feel like they're unworthy because they carry all this burden, all this sin, all this guilt and shame. Take that away from us. Take that away from them, Lord. Let them feel your presence today and every day. Fill them with your love. Fill them with your forgiveness so that that love may also spread not only to you but to others, those around us, Lord. I pray for protection, Lord, as we leave this place today. And I pray that every day of our lives we choose to wake up and the first person that we're thinking of is you. The first person that we want to share our day about is you. And I pray that every day we choose to love and to live in gratitude for what you've done for us and what you continue to do for us and what you will do for us in our lives, Lord. Transform us into the people that you want us to be. And I pray that you continually bless us. And I pray that when we feel or when we feel like we're forgetting you or we're pushing you away, remind us, Lord, always about your goodness, about your grace, about your forgiveness, about how you continually choose to accept us. Doesn't matter where we are at the moment in time. It doesn't matter because you don't judge, Lord. You only choose to love and to forgive. Thank you, Lord. Thank you. Amen and amen.